Welcome back. In the last one or two classes, I was giving extensively, we discussed more about carbon 13 NMR and the information was given. And we even tried to understand and interpret some of the carbon 13 spectra also. And I explicitly brought out to you the advantage of broadband decoupling of protons when you are observing the carbon 13 spectrum. And there are several types of decoupling where we can get decoupling with NOE, decoupling without NOE, coupling with NOE, coupling without NOE, all those things we can see. It is possible to do all those things. That's what I discussed also and took one or two examples of how do we make the assignment of carbon 13 spectrum, especially broadband decoupling, when there is a coupling with other heteronuclei. We'll continue from that today. This is why we discussed last class. That's where we stopped. And I explained to you why this CF3 peak is coming to the downfield and what was the reason for getting this quartet and what was the reason for getting the quartet for this carbon. So we discuss. We'll go to the next, this molecule, another molecule. This is a coupled carbon 13 spectrum of methyl trifluoroacetate in CD3CO CD3. It's a very, very interesting thing. Please remember, now we are talking about coupled carbon 13 spectrum. What is this one? We have to now let us interpret what is this carbon 13 spectrum is. Each and every peak has to be assigned very clearly. How do we go ahead and doing this? Of course, this possibly you all know. When I took trifluoroacetate, CF3, when it becomes CF3, in the previous example we saw CF3 carbon was coming in the downfield somewhere around this region. My first guess, this could be CF3 carbon. We'll start like that. This is structure. First we write the structure. This is structure of this trifluoroacetate. I guess, let us make the assignment. With some assumption we have to start and then prove it later. In the previous example we saw this carbon coming somewhere around 110 to 120 ppm because of attached to fluorine atoms. 3 fluorine atoms are there which are directly bonded to carbon. As a consequence, I said the CF3 carbon is coming very much downfield here. And also we saw in the previous example, carbon fluorine 1 bond J coupling was sufficiently large. See, this is a well dispersed quartet with large chemicals, large separation of the 4 peaks. That means that if you measure the adjacent, any two adjacent peak separation, it gives you J coupling. Look at this separation is quite large. This also tells me, because of the separation and the quartet pattern, that which is coming also at the downfield, this must be CF3. That's one, that is my first, this thing. So this is the first assignment. Next, what I have to see? Look for other carbons. What is the next carbon we can see? This one. This is CH3 carbon. You know why? It is attached to 3 protons and it has to be a quartet. Perfect quartet. And CH coupling 1 bond is, we know what is that order. I have already discussed in the previous class. What is the strength of coupling for sp carbon, sp2 carbon and sp3 carbon. So you have some idea. And as a consequence, I would say this quartet is corresponding to CH3 protons. No doubt about it. Okay. What is the next one? Why this is a quartet? If you look at this one, this carbon is attached to this fluorine. And 2 bond carbon fluorine couplings is not small. It is of the order of 30-40 hertz or sometimes 50 hertz. Look at it. This coupling is about 40 hertz. So as a consequence, I would say this is a carbonyl carbon coupled to 3 chemically equivalent fluorines, CF3 group. CF3 fluorines, it is coupled. As a consequence, this CO carbon is a quartet. That's also fine. But one interesting thing happened. This region is expanded here. If you look at it, this region is expanded. When you expand, it is just not quartets. Each line of the quartet is another quartet. See, it's a quartet of quartets. Where is the second quartet coming from? This is because of the long range coupling of these three protons to this carbon. This carbon is experiencing long range coupling with these three. Remember, in the acetonitrile example, I told you there is a long range proton carbon coupling. Exactly, that is what is happening here. So this carbon is not only experiencing coupling with three fluorines, giving a quartet, it is also experiencing coupling with three equivalent protons, giving rise to quartet of quartets. So that's what it is. Okay, that can be, then our assignment is correct, no doubt about it. Then what about this one? This is a reference TMS. Since it is a broad, it is not a decoupled spectrum, it is a coupled spectrum. TMS gives rise to quartet because it has 4 CH3 groups, right? As a consequence, this is TMS. Fine, that is also assignable. Then this is solvent because we have a CD3CO CD3. Then we have various isotopomers of that. CD2CO CD3, CDCO CD3, all possible combinations we can think of, and this is going to be a complex multiplicity pattern for solvent. That's also fine. Then what is this peak? This is the solvent CO. This is solvent CD3 group. This is CO of the solvent. Very simple, right? All the peaks could be assigned now. This is the advantage. This is the coupled spectrum. Just to give you an idea, I wanted to see how we can make the assignment with a coupled spectrum also. Supposing if I were doing decoupled spectrum, completely broadband decoupled, what you would have got? A singlet here, singlet here, singlet here, singlet here. Then our confusion was, why this singlet, which is that which is coming downfield, what is this singlet? Then we don't know whether this is proton, this is the CH3 carbon or CF3 carbon. We do not know. So this is an idea, and especially this also tells me idea about long range coupling of this carbonyl carbon with these three protons. So these are all advantages. Sometimes to identify peaks, identify particular carbons, we can also make use of coupled spectrum. Okay, this all those information we can obtain. Now take the simple example of a proton decoupled carbon-30 spectrum of 2-fluoropyridine. It is a simple molecule. There is a fluorine here. So what are the things you are observing here? Look at this one. This is a 1-bond carbon fluorine coupling here. 1-bond carbon fluorine coupling. This carbon has to be a large doublet because 1-bond CF coupling is quite large, of the order of about 250 to 300 hertz or even more, sometimes 350 hertz you will see. So this has to be a largest coupling. Then it is a 2-bond carbon fluorine. Then 3-bond. Then 4, like that, 4 bond. Like you can see, depending upon how many bonds that are separated, the coupling strength between carbon and fluorine decreases. Based on the coupling strength itself, we can make the assignment here for each carbon. Look at this one. This is a carbon spectrum. First is this is carbon 2. The proton decoupled. You see all these protons which are coupled with different carbons are removed. All couplings of these protons attached to these carbons and this carbon, everything is removed. We are experiencing only fluorine carbon couplings here. So you don't have to worry about protons at all. So our job becomes very simple now. You have to only consider carbon fluorine couplings. And this is the carbon 2, I told you, because of large separation, it is a doublet, this carbon. This is a 1J-CF coupling, which is the next largest. This is next largest separation is this. See 2J-CF. Then I would safely say this is carbon 3. Okay. What is the next one? This is again 1 to 3 bond coupling. This is C6. C4 1 to 3 bond coupling. This is, of course, this is quite larger than this. There could be some anomaly to identify which carbon, whether this is carbon 6 or this is carbon 4. Okay, that's a way to identify that later. But now what is carbon 5? Carbon 5 is this. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds away. This is carbon 5. So all the carbon, based on the strength of the coupling, you can make the assignments. Very easy in this case. Okay. This is what it is. In the proton decoupled carbon-30 spectrum of this, based on the coupling strengths of heteronuclei between carbon and fluorine, all carbon can be assigned We don't need to worry about the proton coupling at all in this example. Okay, all these things are okay, how to make the assignment of different carbons attached to different protons. But generally, there are only 4 different types of, not generally, always, there are 4 different types of carbon present in the molecule. CH3 carbon, CH2 carbon, CH carbon, and carbon not attached to any proton at all. But in a crowded spectrum, with so many, even after decoupling, I showed you one example of cholesterol, with a complex spectrum. Even after decoupling, even if you get only one peak for each of the carbons present in the molecule, there can be many carbons, many peaks. Then the question of identification of the carbons, whether it is a CH2 carbon, whether it's CH3 carbon or a CH carbon, it still remains to make the assignment. Unlike in the previous example here, where we have to go by the coupling, we get a fully coupled spectrum, we can make the assignment. But again, that complicates the situation. So we have to think of a option, a possibility, where we must get a decoupled spectrum. That is one carbon for one peak for each carbon. At the same time, I must assign whether it is a CH3 carbon, a CH carbon, or CH2 carbon, or quaternary carbon. Based on the number of protons attached to carbon, can I do the editing? This is possible. This is a common experiment which most of the time the chemists make use of it for identification of carbons based on the protons attached to it. Individual carbons can be assignment. You can identify the carbon. You can say that CH3 carbon, I can say the CH2 carbon without going into looking into the coupling pattern. That is an experiment people use called depth. Depth means distortionless enhancement by polarization transfer. Remember, this is a very, very commonly used experiment, and this is the pulse. I will explain about polarization transfer in detail in 1 or 2 classes. Next or subsequent class, I will come and I will explain about what is a polarization transfer, how we do that. The advantage of this is, in this case, we can transfer the magnetization of protons to carbon. You understand? Because proton is rich, in the sense it has a large magnetic moment, more magnetization is there. There is a way we can take the magnetization of the proton, give it to carbon. Then what will happen? It is like robbing the rich and giving the poor. Now the carbon which are less sensitive become more sensitive because it has more magnetization. So detection becomes much better. You can enhance the signal to noise ratio. There is a way to do that. This is a polarization transfer technique. Detailed discussion will follow. But at the moment you understand, this is a distortion enhancement polarization transfer. You can understand all the pulse sequences by vector diagram. Sometimes it is not possible. Then we can use product operators. But we are not going to do all those things. I don't want to frighten you with all those things. But in some examples, I'll give you, especially INAPT, APT, spin echoes, I'll give you vector diagram explanations in the later classes. But this one, you cannot do vector diagram explanation for this thing, because this is a different thing. See, it relies on my manipulation of the multiple quantum magnetization. So it is very difficult to represent this by vectors. So that's why I'm explaining this here itself before polarization transfer experiment. There we can invoke vector diagram to understand the behavior of magnetization, how it is happening, so that we can understand everything. So since it is little difficult, not easy, although we can do up to a certain level, but we cannot do all the time. As a consequence, I don't go by vector diagram approach, but simply I tell you, this is the pulse sequence we use. It is like a echo pulse. This is called spin echo sequence, and this is what we use for polarization transfer. Most important thing what you should know is this angle. Normally we use 90-degree pulse, 180-degree pulses in all the experiment. In this sequence, this last pulse on the proton is not a 90-degree pulse. It is defined by flip angle phi. Phi is an angle up to which the magnetization is tilted. Let us say this is a magnetization along z-axis. You can tilt the magnetization by to the middle of the first quadrant. This is called 45 degree. You can bring it to x-axis. This is called 90 degree. You can take it further down. You can 135 degree or 180 degree, like that. You can play with the magnetization depending upon the pulses. Here the phi pulse is the pulse whose flip angle can be varied. It is in our hands. Okay. What we do is, for the identification of protons attached to different carbons, we do only 3 types of experiments. In each experiment, only phi is varied, all other things remains constant. Okay. Of course, to some extent it is given first thing. I will not go to that. I will come to this thing more detail later, because when I come to explain the inept polarization transfer, everything, this will be explained. But remember one thing, because in carbon-13 I want to complete, I am telling you, keep this in mind. What is happening to magnetization at different place points in here. I'll explain in the next 1 or 2 classes. So now what happens as a function of phi angle? Now what we can do is, we can plot the intensity of different peaks, different carbons. I vary this angle starting from 1 degree to 5 degree, 10 degree, in steps of 5 degree at 10 degree, keep on varying. I have a molecule which contains CH3 carbon, CH2 carbon and CH carbon, all the 3. That's what, let us say, I assume I have it. Now what I will do is, I will record the spectrum, proton decoupled. So I get 3 different peaks for CH3 carbon, CH carbon, CH2 carbon. Measure the intensity of each of these peaks by varying the angle phi. I vary the angle phi, 5 degrees, take one spectrum. Measure the intensity of each of the carbon. Vary angle to 10 degrees or 15 degrees. Always in equal steps I can do, 5 degrees to 10 degrees, like that. Every time I keep measuring the intensity of all the 3 peaks individually. CH, CH2, CH3 intensity I measure. And then I am going to make a plot like this. Very interesting observations you make here. What is the interesting observation you are seeing here? When phi is 45 degree, when the flip angle of the last pulse on the proton channel is 45 degree, you see CH3 carbon, this is the intensity of the peak along this axis. Okay, this is the angle, this is the intensity. Intensity is along y axis, the flip angle is along x axis. So now you see, when at 45 degree, CH3 protons, CH3 carbon, CH2 carbon and CH carbon, all of them have positive intensity. So if I take if I do an experiment, take the spectrum with phi of 45 degree, I will see all the carbons, CH3, CH2, CH carbons, all with positive intensity. Fine. Now I will take an experiment with 90 degree phi angle. Very interesting thing happens. You see that the intensity of CH2 carbon becomes 0, intensity of CH3 carbon becomes 0, whereas CH carbon is positive. Well, there's one way to identify. I take this molecule with different carbons, I do a depth experiment, keeping flip angle of the pulse as 90 degree. Then what did you do? You will remove all carbons which are CH2 and CH3 attached. That will not come at all. You get only CH only spectrum you get. Very interesting, right? So you are editing the spectrum. Then when you do a depth 90 experiment, all the peaks that you observe are only CH carbons. Very simple to identify. Okay. Then the question comes, how do you distinguish between CH2 and CH3 carbons? What are they? I may have CH2 and CH3. How do I identify them? What we do is, there are two questions to be answered. First, you filtered out only CH carbons. Fine. Next, you have to assign CH2 and CH3 carbons. That is second point. And the third is, between these two, I have to distinguish what is what. What I will do is, I will do another experiment with last flip angle pulse at 135 degrees. Remember, I do three experiments. One is 45, one is 90 degree, other is 135. In which case, you look at the intensity of the signals. CH is positive, CH3 is positive, and CH2 is negative. Okay, when you do 135 experiment, depth 135, it is called depth 45, depth 90, and depth 135 experiments. When you do depth 135, simply look at the peaks with negative intensity. That all correspond to carbons attached to two protons. There are CH2 carbons. So are you identified? When you use depth 90, you identified only CHs. Depth 135, find out all the peaks with negative intensity, negative peaks. Then you know that there are CH2s. So do this experiment and this experiment. Then you can identify the leftover peaks. There are CH3 peaks there. Because in CH45 all are positive, and in the depth 45 all are positive. In the depth 135, this is positive, this is negative, this is positive, and in 90 only this is observed. So when you do this experiment first, identify all CH carbons, do this experiment later, then identify all these carbons, then take the difference between this and this, then you know which are all CH3 carbons. Very easy. So this is called spectral editing, and how the intensity of the signal varies. You can derive the pulse sequence, you understand what is happening, everything mathematically, and if you go into theory, how as a flip angle of the phi varies, how the intensity varies can work out. Based on this only, that graphs have been drawn. You can look at it. When phi is equal to 90 degree, what is happening here? Sin 90. What is sin 90? 1. So this is 1. Maximum signal intensity you will get. What happens for CH2 and CH3 when it is sin 90? Look at it. Then these two signals will go to 0. As a consequence, very clearly you say, when it is 90 degree pulse, we see only this. So based on this theoretical understanding, how the intensity of the different peaks of different carbons attached to different protons vary as a function of angle phi, we know how we can edit the carbon 13 spectrum. This is a example how we can see. I'll explain what is APT in inept later. I will not discuss. It is called attached proton test and insensitive nuclear enhanced polarization transfer. First, I have to explain to you polarization transfer, and these are all the methods. This is a method to identify carbons also. We'll come to that later. Since depth is the most commonly used experiment, I am discussing this now. So this is a stick plot, not a real spectrum. It's a stick plot. So if I do a normal carbon 13 experiment, you see all carbons, CH3, CH2, CH, quaternary. I do depth 45, I don't see quaternary. Why? Because it is not attached to protons. So it is no question of detecting this. So do one thing, do a depth 45 experiment. Find out this difference between this and this. You know all the quaternary carbons. That is one way. You identify, and identification of quaternary carbons is done. Next depth 90 you do, you get only CHs. That means you already identified this because of this, and you already identified this because of this depth 90. Now do depth 135. In the depth 135, CH is positive. All carbons attached to odd protons are positive. Carbon attached to even protons are negative. So CH2 is negative. So now you identified this also. In these three experiments, you identified this, this, and this. Then find out the sum and difference of the others, then you can identify this also. Very easy. So you can cleverly combine varieties of all these three experiments, and you can do the spectral editing, identify all the particular carbons which are attached to protons. It's a very easy experiment. Please remember that. A simple example is one molecule called Pulegon. This has got CH, CH2, CH3 carbons. Look at this. This is the normal spectrum. This is depth 90. You see only CH carbons here. All other things are efficiently suppressed. All other carbons except CH2 carbons are efficiently suppressed here. Nothing is there. Depth 135 degree. What is happening here? CH2s are negative. CH and CH3s are positive. So that means there are 3 carbons here with CH2 protons. These are all CH2 carbons. You see this one, and somewhere here, this one. Okay, these 3 carbons are CH2 carbons. You understand? Of course, depth 90, when you do, you know that, of course, you observe this, and in this case, you also see this, you don't see that at all. So you also identified quaternary carbons here, that is not seen. In this one, you observed CH carbons. In this, you observed CH2 carbons. Now you can identify from using all the knowledge you gained by doing editing, addition or subtraction, or seeing which peak is coming in which spectrum. Leftover peaks are CH3. You can easily identify CH3 carbons. So this is a simple example. This is called editing. Proper addition and subtraction of the depth spectra with different values. Of course, you have to scale the intensities. All intensities are same. That's called a intensity scaling factor. You can scale it and then make a subtraction. When you do that, this is called depth editing. You can get CH3 only per spectrum. You can get CH2 only spectrum. You get CH only spectrum, and you get completely all other things. And of course, you can get quaternary also alone. See, very easy now. I can get spectrum corresponding to different carbons individually. I can detect by taking the addition and subtraction, making combinations of all these 3 different experiments. I can filter out the peaks corresponding to each carbon attached to different protons. This is a depth experiment. It is extremely useful to identify the carbons, assign the carbons, but at the same time doing decoupling. There is no coupling information. What is the advantage? You get signal to noise ratio more. Secondly, this is an experiment done by using what is called a polarization transfer. Added advantage is you bring the polarization of the proton to carbon, enhance its signal intensity. That's one other advantage. So this experiment has many advantages. So this is commonly done, utilized by all the chemists. So this is a bigger molecule like codeine, which is taken from the literature. You can see various combinations you can do. If A, B, C, D is the D is the normal spectrum, and in this case C is a all protonated carbons will come at 45. Scale it and then take the difference between these two, will get only quaternary. Similarly, you take A plus B. A is a depth 135, B is depth 90, C is depth 45, and subtract from add these two and subtract this, you get only CH3 carbons. Like that, you can play with it by adding and subtracting, by scaling the intensity by some ratio. You can filter out the spectrum corresponding to individual carbons attached to particular number of protons. Okay, this is what is the edited spectrum of codeine. This is CH3 only carbon, CH2 only carbon, CH only carbon, normal spectrum. So what I just wanted to tell you is there is a okay, there is no point in giving more examples. Finally, it remains the same. What you have to understand is we can today what I discussed is in the carbon-13 NMR. Most important point you should understand: we can get fully decoupled carbon-13 spectrum with various possibilities of decoupling. I explained already. Normally, what you do is a decoupling with NOE. You get a single peak for each carbon, in which case assignment is a challenging task. You have to assign which carbon correspond to which group, whether it is CH3 carbon, CH carbon, or CO carbon, etc. That one way is you have to do the coupled spectrum and make the assignment. I gave an example. But then coupled spectrum complicates the issue. So it is like asking too much. We want it decoupled, and at the same time we want make the assignment easily. So this is what we want to have the cake and we want to eat it too. That is the thing now we have to do. So alternative for that is a polarization transfer experiment called depth experiment. Expansion for it is torsionless enhancement of polarization transfer. If that experiment is done, what is going to happen is the pulse sequence is simple. There is a spin-echo sequence and also polarization transfer, both are present there. If you understand that there is a last pulse in the proton channel, it's a detection pulse we call, is with the flip angle phi. You can vary the flip angle phi. Normally, the experiments have been done as a function of various angle phi and measuring the intensity of 3 different types of carbons. It is observed when phi is equal to 45 degree, all are positive intensity, all the 3 types of carbons. In the normal spectrum, everything will come. When phi is equal to 90, you get only CH carbons. When phi is equal to 135, all carbon attached to odd number of protons. That is, CH carbon and CH3 carbons are positive in intensity. CH2 carbon is negative in intensity. Understand? So, of course, you may ask me a question, why it is negative, what to do with that? This is only phasing. When you do the practical consideration, I tell you, this phasing you can always make it positive, then later, phase correction we can always do. So, but this is the way. Now, proper combination with the scaling factor, proper addition and subtraction of all these things can give you CH only spectrum, CH3 only spectrum, CH3 only spectrum, or quaternary only spectrum. This way, even in a very complex molecule, you can do the decoupled spectrum and also identify the carbons based on the protons attached and make the assignment. So this is an important experiment. Depth, please remember, you need to do depth 45, depth 90 and depth 135 for identification. So with this, I think I'll stop for the carbon 13 NMR. I gave extensively for more than 1 or 2 classes because this is extensively utilized and you require more information about this thing. Please go back and read a lot more things. As I've been telling you, NMR is an ocean of knowledge. What I'm giving you only the tip of an iceberg. Please go back, read more about carbon 13, more about the type of experiment like we do for identification, etc. So next class, I'll go to heteronuclear interactions and analysis a couple of spectra of different nuclei.